Okay, folks, welcome back to part two of the alternate access training. I'm going to continue through this and try to go as quickly as I can to give you useful information, but also to be as quick as I can. So to pick up, we've gone through the listening part. We are on page 79. We're going to talk a little bit about the speaking assessment. So the speaking test has 8 different tasks, and they progressively get more difficult. From a lower level to a higher level, proficiency level 1 to proficiency level 5. Each task is aligned to the proficiency level of the item. And that'll be clear when you see the simple rubric on the next page. And the expectation for that particular item, so what you're expecting to hear, what you want to hear for a particular item, is actually scripted. You will see that in the response booklet where you are recording the students' responses, so it makes it very easy for you. On page 80, this chart at the top of the page, this gives you an overview of what you would hear at a proficiency level 1. So the student can respond with an intentional sound or word. Proficiency level 2, the child could respond with chunks of language or perhaps a phrase. Proficiency level 3, one or more simple statements. And again, as an individual who knows this child, whether it's a teacher or another adult employee at the school who knows this child well, who's administering the assessment, you can have more insight into the way this child communicates that perhaps a person who doesn't know the child would not have. And so that will help you score this more accurately. But this gives you an overview of what you would expect to hear for that particular item at that particular proficiency level. And again, this is going to be clear when you get your student response booklets and you're able to see how you score this. So transcribing the speaking test. Although transcription is optional, you may want to transcribe what you think you hear the student saying, because once you transcribe this, it may be easier for you and more accurate for you to score it if you transcribe it, but again, that is optional. And it mentions nonverbal communication, so even a nod or a movement of a particular part of the body that indicates a response, since you know this student, you can accept that as a response. So that would be nonverbal communication. But again, you have to know the child, and that's why it's so important that somebody who knows the child is administering the alternate access. And so this is an overview of how you would score that. So for this particular task, you have 3 questions. And if the child is able to respond appropriately to one of those questions, then you bubble in meets for that particular that particular question for that task. And then you move on to the next task for that particular domain, that particular part. So, administering the speaking test. So on this part of the assessment, the child has 6 opportunities, questions 1, 2, and 3, with repetition to provide a positive response, to provide a correct response. So you would ask question 1, you would repeat question 1. Ask question 2, repeat question 2. Ask question 3, repeat question 3. And if the child responds correctly and meets that expectation, you're going to bubble that in for that particular question, and then the child meets the expectation for that task. So let me repeat. The child has 6 opportunities to respond correctly to meet that expectation for any given task on the speaking assessment. And on page 81, it goes through that process in great detail. Read the question, that's number 1. Repeat the question, number 2. Read the question, repeat the question. That's question 3. Read the question, repeat the question. But remember, all 6 of these questions, the 3 original questions and the 3 repetitions, are for one particular task. And if the child responds correctly to any one of these, then the child meets the expectations for that task. And this is the WIDA Consortium's way of saying we want to give this child every opportunity to respond so we can score this child appropriately. and that's a good thing. Scoring the speaking test, if the child meets that expectation, you simply bubble in the meets expectation oval. If the child does not meet that expectation, is incorrect, you bubble in approaches. And remember, if a child has 3 consecutive approaches, 3 consecutive incorrect responses, then you end that particular part of the assessment and you go to the next part of the assessment. If the child is not able to respond, fill in the bubble for no response. Once you reach the point where the child can't go any further, you would fill in the bubbles for not administered. Okay, so additional information about the writing test. So the students do work directly with the student response booklet, and they can use whatever writing instrument that they feel comfortable with. And this gets into some of the very special accommodations which may be appropriate for these students. Again, if they use these augmentative devices on a regular basis in the classroom, they can certainly use them for the writing assessment. So the student does not write directly. So a child that uses an alternate device would not write directly in the student response book, but you're allowed to scribe their responses. If you have any additional questions about scribing, talk to my accountability friends. They will give you additional insight into how we do that. So scaffolding support, that goes back to this yellow piece of paper that you should all have a copy of. It may be a different color for you, but it's yellow for me. Down at the bottom, it does mention that you can read these words to the students for grade level clusters 6, 8, 9, 12. And that is included in the script for K2 and 3, 5, but it was left out of the script for grade level clusters 6, 8, and 9, 12. But grades 6, 8, and 9, 12 can have those word lists read out to them. And this gives you a little more insight into any additional scaffolding that the students may be able to use. The proficiency level descriptors are in Appendix C. We'll take a look at those at the end of this video, although I've already touched on some of those previously. And this is an overview of what that rubric would look like. The writing rubric for the alternate access, these are the expectations. So level 1 student, they can write a representation of something. It could be a picture, a symbol, a number, a letter, but that representation has meaning for the student. Level 2, they could write a single word. Level 3, a little bit longer, 1 or 2 or more chunks of language, phrase, or clause. And you can see how that language develops both in quantity and quality as you move higher. So for the writing test, the transcription is optional. Again, students have 6 opportunities, just like in the previous domain. And this gives you an overview. I'm sorry, my 1 looks a little bit like a slash mark, but that's a 1. First opportunity, second opportunity to repeat that question. Third opportunity when you read question 2. Fourth opportunity when you repeat question 2. Fifth opportunity when you provide them with question 3. Sixth opportunity when you repeat question 3. So they have 6 opportunities to respond to a question for a given task. And again, the WIDA Consortium wants to give the students the benefit of the doubt so they can show, give them every opportunity to show what language they possess so you can score appropriately. How to score the writing test. It's scored the same as the other parts. If the child meets that expectation, you bubble in the meet oval. If it's incorrect, that is called approaches, and you bubble in the approach oval. And then you've got no response and not administered, and you can use those appropriately. Okay, and then after testing, it gives you a little bit of background on how to wrap this up. And just do everything the accountability department tells you to do to get these materials back to central office. So let me point out the rubric for you in the back of the team. Okay, I'm now on page 96 of your test administrator's manual. This is the listening rubric, and you can see what you would expect for level 1 to level 5. So discourse dimension, this is really the complexity of language the child is using. The word phrase dimension, this is really the vocabulary the child has control of. And this is the listening rubric. This is the reading rubric for the alternate access. And again, this is in your appendix. This is the speaking rubric for the alternate access. And this is the writing rubric for the alternate access. So this is very clear as to what you can expect for a task level 1, task level 2, task level 3, 4, and 5, and so on. And this concludes the alternate access video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I'm using the term enjoy loosely, but I hope you guys have a good afternoon. Thank you so much. Goodbye.